Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this bizarre Monday when we have a Rogers outage and quite a number of people not able to do the usual phone calls from their phones and text messages. But welcome to the Valley Line Southeast LRT Virtual Spring Open House update for downtown. It's presented by TransEd and the City of Edmonton. This is actually the last of the virtual open houses that we have been doing along the entire 13-kilometer alignment. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We shall be taking questions and comments for the duration of the presentation. So if you are on your phone or your tablet, if you just go to the bottom of the screen, you'll see a Q&A. And if you tap that Q&A, you'll be able to submit a question or a comment. And if you are on your desktop or laptop, if you just need to escape or exit the full screen mode and then go to the top left corner, and you should see a Q&A that you can click on and submit a question or comment. Once again, we'll be taking questions and comments for the entire duration of the presentation that will be answered at the end of it. This presentation is also being recorded and will be available on our website and social media and our YouTube. So on the call today, from the City of Edmonton, we have Michelle Ponich, who has a special announcement.
There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As Isabel said, my name is Michelle, and I'm here on behalf of the City of Edmonton. We realize that you may have expected ETS and parking management to be with us today. Unfortunately, they are unable to be here. Should you have any ETS or parking management related questions, please feel free to reach out to ETS via 311 or parking management via email at epark@edmonton.ca. That's EPARK@edmonton.ca. Or if it's more comfortable for you to ask your question during the Q&A portion of the presentation, we'd be happy to take it back to the respective areas at the city and get an answer for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. And on the TransEd side, we have Eric Marcotte, who is the Alstom Rail Testing and Commissioning Manager. We have Dallas Linskog, who is the TransEd Communications Manager. And the voice that you're hearing right now is me, Isabel Onaba. I'm TransEd Communications Coordinator. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dallas.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can see me well. Set up my camera here. Thanks for joining us. As Isabel mentioned, we are recording this presentation today. So those of you that may have found us online, thanks for clicking on the link. Thanks for visiting our website or checking out our social media accounts. I hope you find the information really useful today. You can expect to probably sit down here for the next hour or so. Depends on how many questions come in, but we're happy to answer as many that come in. So, I mean, maybe you've got your dinner with you, you're sitting, got your feet up and relaxing. But if not, those of you that are watching online, we just want to thank you again, and you get the luxury of hitting pause and coming back to it. But for a bit of an overview, those that may not already realize, this project's been ongoing for about 5 years. It's a public-private partnership with the City of Edmonton. It is made up of, well, TransEd is made up of a number of different companies. So we are a joint venture partnership. Bechtel, Ellis Don, Alstom, and Fengate are the 4 companies that make up TransEd. And we are happy to be partnering with the city. This is a long duration project. And what I mean by that is it's more than just construction. We're here for the next 30 years to operate the train system as well. And we'll be talking to you a little bit about those details as we move through the presentation. But it's really important to know that we're not just here to build it. We're here to run it and operate it as well. And I, for one, can speak personally. I'm really excited to get on board the trains and be involved in the handing it over to our operations group here coming up in the few months here. I am going to be talking a little bit about the schedule and when we get to open to passengers. So I'm not going to tell you right now. I'm going to make you wait a little bit through the presentation, kind of keep you a little bit of a hook there. But I promise to answer that question as best as I possibly can at the very beginning of the question and answer segment. To get started here, though, we are a 13-kilometer long alignment for the Valley Line Southeast, starting in Mill Woods and heading north into downtown. And then, of course, Valley Line West will take it from downtown to the west side of the city. There are 11 stops along here. That's indicated by the blue boxes, as you see on the screen. And there is one major station elevated at the Davies Park and Ride and Davies Transit Center, which is the blue portion of the center of your map. And then I also like to highlight, and I'm sure those of you that are in the downtown area are well aware of this already, but the other green box at the top of the map there is the Churchill Connector. And that provides the physical connection by stairs, escalator, and elevator from the Valley Line to the existing Churchill station below ground, where you can connect to the Capital and Metro lines. All right, I'm going to give you a quick update of what this presentation is going to cover. So right off the bat, I'm going to take you through some of the construction updates, starting with an overview of what we've been doing for the last 6 months while the ground has been frozen, and then a little bit of a status on some of the milestone locations and activities along the 13 kilometers. And then I'm going to focus in a bit more on the downtown area, like the Dewatnow Bridge, the 102 street stops, the Churchill Connector, a bit more detail there, and also some information on the quarter stop. Then I'm going to hand it over to Eric today. Eric is going to talk about testing and commissioning activities. I think you'll find that very interesting. It's a new phase of the project that we're entering, where we're getting the trains out on the track, where we're testing all of the connections and electrical systems, and that's kind of the last step before we welcome passengers. So I think you'll find that interesting, and certainly you'll have a new appreciation for the amount of work and the amount of wires that are in the ground that that team has been working on. And then Eric will hand it over to Isabel to talk about some safety messaging. And we're going to focus on the differences between the low floor system and the existing high floor system in Edmonton, and how you interact with that train, particularly how you interact with the train in the downtown corridor as well. And then we'll flip it over to the questions. So as we go through the presentation, make sure you're sending in your questions. With that, then I'm going to dive into some overview. So right off the bat, I'm going to start way on the south end. We've been working in the Millwoods area with our testing and commissioning, and Eric will take you through that and give you some details in a bit on that. But I can tell you that all the way from the Millwoods location of the project all the way to downtown, all 13 kilometers of steel rail has been laid. All of that is on the ground and connected and ready for trains to roll on it. In addition to that, we have stood all of the overhead catenary system poles, and Eric will talk about that as well some more. All those poles are in place, and a good portion of the cabling is strung from those poles as well. Some other highlights: the vast majority of our road work is done. What you'll see along the 13 kilometers this year is primarily the final top lift paving that occurs. Probably about 80% of the area is not done at this point, and that is, again, one of those last activities that we do to button things up. Kind of, we call it basically paving from lip of gutter to lip of gutter, one edge of the road to the other. A lot of that will happen this year, and that will lead to the final line markings and things like street lights and traffic signals and so on. And we'll talk more about those details as well. The other thing that's happened a lot in the last year and that will carry into this year is the landscaping. So the majority of our landscaping adjacent to the roadways from the south all the way to the river valley is largely complete. This year, we're going to focus on the work in the river valley, and I'll talk about that here briefly in a second. All right, so then let's talk about the Dewatnow Bridge. This is what you see on the screen right now. All of the cable stays were installed last year. The bridge deck itself, the bridge deck proper, made out of concrete, is completely installed. And as I said before, we have the rail and the OCS poles all stood across that bridge as well. So our crews, difficult to tell by looking here, but our crews have been working on pulling the cables across the bridge and making all of the electrical connections. And then, as you can see in the top right photo, we're now switching gears to installing the underslung shared use path that hangs beneath the structure. And you can see in that photo a frame that travels along the bridge, and you can see some of the steel hangers that are anchored to the concrete that will support and that hang the SUP, or the shared use path, below the bridge. So that will be ongoing for the next few months here, installing that bridge. Now, we often get the question of when will pedestrians be allowed to cross the bridge or able to use that shared use path. I can tell you that the bridge itself, or the walkway underslung, will actually be complete and ready for passengers before the connections on either side of the river will be complete. And the reason for that, and you can kind of see it in the bottom picture, is we have construction laydown yards on both sides. So we need to demobilize all of our trailers and equipment from those locations and reestablish the Louise McKinney Park and the Henrietta Muir Park on both sides of the river. Part of that work also involves moving some dirt around, a little bit of the grading, we call it, and that will involve some further geotechnical stabilization of those slopes, all very normal activities that are built into our design. And effectively, we start at the top of the hill and we work our way down. It's kind of like painting yourself out of a room. We'll do the same with our landscaping. And that landscaping is actually kind of unique in the river valley. So that is reforestation and naturalization. You may have heard that we harvested seeds, native seeds from the river valley a few years ago. Those seeds have been germinating and growing into trees in nurseries for the past numerous summer seasons. And we will be taking those from the nurseries and planting them in the river valley this year. So that's a pretty significant accomplishment for us as well, and a big milestone for the river valley. So as we do that reforestation and naturalization, we'll also do the trail connections. Those trail connections then will allow the pedestrians to access and connect to the underslung shared use path. Now, all of that work that I described on the sides of the riverbanks will take all summer and into the fall to complete. So when we get asked when will pedestrians be allowed to cross that bridge, our response to that is late this fall. All right, I think we can move to the next slide, Isabel. Okay, so I'm going to take you now to the very far end of the alignment for at least the southeast. And this is just, this photo on the left side is taken from the pedway that crosses 102nd Avenue, connecting to Edmonton City Centre Mall and Manulife Place. So this is looking straight to the east. You can see the stop construction well underway there. That is very typical of, actually this is one of the last stops that needs some additional work on the shelters. You can see the frames are going in. The glass may have been installed even since this picture's been taken. But all of our stops, all of the 11 stops that I mentioned before, have got the steel structures stood. And we're at a stage now where we're installing the glazing or the glass. A lot of that is the art glass that you'll see if you drive the alignment and have a look. And also allows us to heat those shelters. So that's something that's unique and new to the Valley Line Southeast in this low floor system. All of the shelters at each stop will be heated in the wintertime during operating hours. The other things happening at the platforms here really just have to do with things like the electrical connections. It's difficult to tell, except for, I think you see it in a different photo later on, but a lot of the cabinets are going in, and all the cable connections that Eric will talk about are being made at those locations as well. So on the street for 102nd Avenue, the majority of the paving stone has been installed. So it's difficult to tell from the photos. Well, you can kind of see it on the bottom right one. The sidewalks in downtown are constructed using paving stones, and a lot of different styles and colors and patterns are integrated into that design to give it some visual interest, but also to give it safety demarcation to help you understand as a pedestrian where to walk and where to cross the track and cross the roadway and so on. So I'm sure if you've been in the downtown and live in that area, you've seen a lot of that. There is some work to do on that this spring to finish up. Beneath those paving stones is a concrete structure. Beneath that is gravel. Beneath that is the earth. All very much designed to support the loads of vehicles and so on that drive on top of it. However, sometimes errors are made, and you may have noticed even starting today, we're starting to remove some concrete that was poured last fall that is just slightly out of elevation. And I mean by just millimeters, but millimeters matter. And especially in areas where it's relatively flat, we have to pay very close attention to drainage to make sure that when it rains, the water goes where it's supposed to go. So we will be ripping out a portion, not a large portion, of the concrete and replacing that here in the coming few weeks, and then we'll move right on to the paving stones. Of course, that's TransEd's cost. Errors occur, like I said, but we take on that risk, and we will be paying for that. So this doesn't impact the taxpayers of Edmonton at all. All right, if we can move to the next slide then, please, Isabel. This is the Churchill connector. This, as I said before, is the connection from at ground or at grade level, street level, to the existing station beneath beneath Churchill Square. This building is largely complete. You can see the photo on the bottom right as an example is those blue columns are the columns that support the street above. They were always there. You may recall they were a wall just between those round columns in the past. This has all been kind of hidden behind our construction hoarding for the last numerous years. Well, I can tell you now that is now doors going in, and final tiling work and finishing works on the inside of the connector are ongoing. And of course, you can see from the outside there that the building finishes are basically complete. So we are in the stage now where we'll be doing the commissioning of the facilities in there, things like the escalators and the elevators in the short few weeks here ahead. And we're hoping to have that, excuse me, have that open to pedestrians late this fall as well. On to the next slide. So we skip past Churchill stop, but I can tell you it's very similar to the 102 Ave stop and very similar to the Quarters stop as well that you see in the top right corner here. On the left, we'll start there. What you're seeing is the tunnel portal. That is where the LRT exits the tunnel and comes up onto 102nd Avenue. That's covered by a structure, as you can see there. We call that the Chinese structure, and this is a new Chinese gate that's been installed as well. Where you see that man basket, that blue piece of equipment, there'll be a number of landscaping features that'll be installed here in the next few months, and some additional vegetation, planting beds, that sort of thing. And also there'll be some more decorations and some features added to that structure that we're going to unveil later this summer. But for now, I'm just going to leave it hanging a little bit and have you watch for what's coming. I'm being a little bit cagey purposely, but watch for that. It's going to be a really, really great looking structure when it's completely done. As you can see already, it's coming a long way. The Quarter stop, as you can see, as I mentioned before, well underway. This is the photo I wanted to show you where you can see the steel cabinets, or sorry, the stainless steel cabinets that are in place. Many, 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 like thousands of connections of wires happen inside those cabinets, and Eric will talk about that shortly. One last comment on this slide: the roadway changes down between 97th Street and 95th Street. So this is in the Chinese area of downtown, right in front of the Chinese Elders Mansion, if you're familiar with that area. That used to be a multi-lane roadway, not a lot of traffic on it. It's now been changed to a one-lane roadway in the eastbound direction. So it used to be a one-way westbound. Now it's a one-way eastbound. Just something important to note, you can enter that roadway off of Jasper Avenue. Another note there, last year you may have saw that we had changed a 5-way intersection at that location to now a 4-way intersection, much more typical. And then just slightly to the west is where you can turn off of Jasper Avenue and enter 102 Avenue on this lane that you can see pictured on the right, bottom right. And that will take you all the way to 97th Street, where you will have to turn left or right. Okay, I think we can move to the next slide. And I believe this is where I'm going to hand it over to Eric. Yes, so Eric's going to talk to you a little bit about the train testing and how he and his crews have been working with commissioning and getting everything tested and ready for passengers. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Dallas. So guys, it's really wonderful to see those vehicles, really, really nice piece of work, as you can see. And you notice, looking at the car right in front of us, you can actually see through the wall, that's backing up the driver, and through to the outside via the windshield. So as you actually look at the car, it's really an open concept. So you don't feel that you're oppressed. It's really to maximize the comfort for everybody. Really, really happy for all the trains to be there. So can you go to the next page, please? So as I was mentioning, all the trains now have arrived home, so to Edmonton. Really, really proud of that. All 26 trains have been manufactured into our facility in Kingston, Ontario. And every single train has been going through exhaustive testing, where we verify all the functionalities, the different methods of operation of the train. We verify the propulsion, the brakes, the power system, the HVAC. Really, really a lot of very good things that were done there. So you see on the upper left quadrant, the vehicle that are stored into the OMF. The OMF is the Operation Maintenance Facility, and that's the building that you can see to your right. So you see there's one side of the building where you have only 3 tracks coming in, and the other side that have a lot more than 3. So the one on the right is basically where you see on the upper left quadrant. So this is where the vehicle are stored, and they're stored there, just to make sure to keep them, away from the elements, for one, not because they can't, but just to make sure that they're ready to go, no matter the weather. And we have minimum amount of time to actually get them operational and sent on the guideway. So you can just imagine if we would have to clear the snow from every single vehicles before we actually send them out would be a little bit of work. So that's one of the main reasons for that. Now, inside of the operation maintenance facility, which is a wonderful building, we've got the operation control center located in one of the corners that's actually communicating with all the different devices and equipment along the alignment. So that will be the nerve center of the system, being able to communicate with the drivers, but also communicating with you, the passengers, as you're maybe have requests or have urgent need or emergent needs that can be fulfilled by the local attendants. So OCC will be able to provide the response or dispatch as required to make sure that you get the proper service. So really interesting things, and again, extremely proud that all 26 trains are now home in Edmonton, and they really have their place here in Edmonton. So really glad about that. So go to the next slide, please. Maybe come back one. I think there's one item that I'd like to discuss is the AVIS system. So if we go back on the one that we had prior to that, so you see the small white building that's in front of the operation maintenance facility. Yeah, where the blue dot is. So now this is actually our automated vehicle inspection system. So it's made to really go through predictive type maintenance where we do the inspection of the vehicles and do all kinds of measurements, take videos and make sure that we map out all the components under and on the side of the vehicle. And all of this to make a more thorough inspection and more systematically. And that, again, is to look for things that may be needing of adjustment before we actually need to do the maintenance. So thus providing much better service. So there's a whole lot of things in the system right now that have been put into place that will allow to have that type of predictive maintenance that will be very, very interesting. The whole idea is that this is going to be invisible to you, the passengers, but it will make sure that all of our maintenance and all of our details of operation will be invisible to you, and all you have to worry about is the comfort of the ride and getting in place at the time that you had scheduled. So let's go to the next one. So as you can imagine, and as you've seen, some of you maybe, or as maybe you have been made aware, but in case you have not, we have brought the trains already on the alignment. So what you see here is the area between Millwoods, Millbourne, so it's around the 36th Avenue. And we've been really looking at how the vehicle behaves on the alignment. But the point that I wanted to make to you here is the overhead catenary. So those are the poles, and the poles that Dallas mentioned earlier that are really deployed or installed throughout the guideway and all the on the whole line. So you see that up top of those are different elements that are attached on either side. We call that the jewelry. So that's what supports the OCS, which is basically the overhead catenary system. So OCS is short for it. So the overhead catenary system, or the OCS, is what carries the power that actually is used by the train to be moving along the alignment. So whenever you see those cables up there, that means that there's power. You have to assume that there's power. You cannot know if there is or there is not. We'll have Isabelle that will talk to us about the safety measures and practice that everybody needs to observe in order to be safe. But looking at that height, as long as you stay at a good distance and you're not trying to go close, then you'll be fine. And really, that is really what's moving our trains in and around the alignment. Another point also that I want to make is that you notice that we have voluntarily designed for a very open concept. So that really, excuse me, that really is meant to minimize the intrusion on the field of view of the passenger and the public in general. But of course, there's a really important point is that you need to stay clear of the path of the train. So those trains are very, very silent. It's very difficult to hear them because of that. And one cannot assume that you will hear them coming. So you really have to be careful, use the proper locations for crossings and so on. And again, Isabelle will give you more information a little bit later on in the presentation about that. So can you go to the next slide, please? So as we go through with the train, one of the very first step that we will do is actually do some clearance verification. So you see the vehicle right now is equipped with those little winglets on the side. So that's the dynamic envelope. And we're using that as a last check before we have a vehicle enter the alignment and operate under its own power. So, there's a lot of very good talent that has been working, taking all kinds of measures, making some verification of the drawings of the installations, just to be sure that everything is clear. But this is an additional check that we do. So what's very important is that for us, we want to make sure that everything is perfect. So it's an exacting job. We're not presuming, we're actually verifying to make sure that everything is okay. So once you see a vehicle that's actually being pushed, and the vehicles are not going under their own power, so they're usually being pushed by another asset called the mobile recovery vehicle. So once you see that coming by your way, then you know that we're verifying the clearances, and you know that it won't be long before we actually have a train circulating in the area. Okay, so we may sometimes do that a couple of times just to assure ourselves of a couple of points. And once it's completed and the power is available and deployed, then of course we will start acting in dynamic. So in the lower side, that gives you an idea of how close the vehicles are going to be circulating to one another. So of course you don't want to have anybody in and around those trains. So very, very important. Again, they're very, very silent. So on the upper right corner, you see the normal street lights, and also you see some new poles that were not there before and are a little bit different. So those are these signals that are being used by the train operators in order to cross the street. So the same way as normal drivers, they have to obey the signs, and it's quite important. And those light systems are synchronized in such a way that everybody has their own priority, and it's very important that everybody is observant of those rules. And again, Isabelle will talk to us a little bit more about what you need to do, but definitely don't turn on right when you have those trains, and if the signs are indicating that you should wait. Really, really important to be observant of that. So as far as that system, it's part of the signaling system, and it takes quite a fair bit of integration and testing. So we have a number of devices that are in and on the track and are used to detect the position of the train, and talking to cabinets that are into our utility cabinets, but also at the operation control center, so we know where the trains are, and we also have the proper decision with respect to the street light operations. So again, that verification is very exacting. There's a lot of steps that we need to follow, and you'll probably hear some of that as we get closer to doing those activities. But one thing that's very, very important is to understand that once you start seeing that we're coming in and testing those, the vehicles are going to start operating using the signals, and it's time to be really, really sharp, and as everybody should be, operating in traffic and be self-aware of the vehicles that are coming. So let's go to the next slide. So we'll be continuing our testing activities, and this is going to be very interesting to see, as we have, again, many systems that we need to integrate. Now, Isabelle is going to talk to us about train safety, and I hinted about a couple of things, and I'm sure that you will find this very interesting. But again, it's a very wonderful system. I'm really happy that we're starting the commissioning on that. It's going to take a little bit of time to get all of that work done. And again, one of the things that we're doing, and as we're verifying the different subsystems, and we were talking about the cabinets a little bit earlier with Dallas. Not all of the work is really evident. We are doing some testing, but sometimes you won't necessarily see a vehicle moving along. So it's not because a vehicle is not moving that people are not actually doing testing. And as Dallas was mentioning, we've got thousands of connections, actually some thousands of connections in a stop. So along the whole system, it's a whole lot. It's not because you see an overhead catenary system and no train that there's no power. So with those words, Isabelle, please talk to us about safety a little bit more.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. I'm going to take you through a little bit on the train safety side. So, as you might have heard, Dallas and Eric mentioned the low floor train system differs from the current high floor train system that many Edmontonians and many on the call right now are used to seeing around Edmonton. And so some of the features differ. For example, the low floor train system with Valley Line Southeast has no crossing arms, no gates, no bells, no fences, and then the high floor system has all those features with them. So I'm going to take you through the train safety. Some of the features will be, some of the train safety messaging that I'm going to give you will be applicable only for construction time when we're active construction zones, and some of it will be carried on from train testing, which is right now, all the way into the operations and maintenance of the Valley Line Southeast, which is when we have public service commencement. So the first one is to be aware of your surroundings and other road users and to stay alert while on the road. This photo was taken last year on 95th Avenue, and it's a clear illustration of how the cars share the road with trains. And you can see here that the track moves in the middle of the road, and on either side, you'll have traffic. And so we ask that when you're traveling as a road user, if you're on your bike, your two-wheeler, or you're an e-scooter, you're doing your e-scooter ride around town, or if you are on a motorcycle or car, we just to make sure that you pay attention and you stay alert while you're on the road and to be aware of your surroundings and all other road users. The second one is do not shortcut across tracks, only cross at designated pedestrian crossings. Again, the Valley Line Southeast low floor train system has no crossing arms. It doesn't have any gates or bells or fences. So unlike what you have seen, for example, one of my favorite examples is at Kingsway, when you see the train coming in, the gates come down, the fences come down, and then there's the bells to alert you that the train is going to be crossing. With this one, they won't be that kind of those kind of features with it. And so we just ask that when you are crossing, you wait until it's safe to do so. We have provided there's lots of safety with the pedestrian crossings that are there for you to make sure that you're able to cross safely. We do ask that you be a good neighbor. If, for example, if you're waiting for the cross sign, you're at the cross sign and you're waiting for it, it's just a few seconds, and you see somebody trying to dash across the road, you can tell them to be patient and just say there's no crossing arms, gates, or bells with this feature, with this Valley Line Southeast, and to just wait until it's safe to cross. And that you don't never know whose life you could save with just those small actions that you can do by being a good neighbor. The third one is to always follow the direction of construction personnel and flaggers. The construction personnel and flaggers are there for your safety. They're there for the safety of our crews as well, and they're there for their own safety too. So we want to make sure that all road users are able to get to their destination safe. We want to make sure that our crews get home to their friends and their families safe. So if you see a crew, one of our flag persons holding a stop sign, or he is just trying to cue you to go, we ask that you pay attention to all the direction that they're giving you at that point, because they're able to see, or they have some knowledge of something, some moving parts that you can't see at that moment. And so their direction is for your safety, and it's for the safety of their crew members as well. And we just ask that anytime that you see them, and in our active construction zones, you just make sure that you follow the direction of them and the construction personnel and the flaggers. The fourth one is to always follow traffic and pedestrian signs and signals. This is something that Eric touched on when he was talking about the signals that you have seen there, and then the traffic signals that are for the road users. And so, for example, in this photo, some of the traffic signals might not be active at this moment, but they will be active, and some of them already are, where they say no left turn. And we just ask that the public, you follow the traffic sign and the pedestrian signals that are put up there for you. I've said this quite a number of times, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but a lot of these signals and these signs and this signage is always there for you. It's there for your safety. It's there for the safety of all the other road users. And so we ask that anytime that you see them, you follow their direction, and you just pay attention to the traffic and pedestrian signs and signals that are put up on the entire 13-kilometer alignment. The fifth one is to be aware that coming into contact with live overhead wires can lead to serious injury or death, and to keep all high-reaching devices such as ladders, outdoor banner light installation poles, drones, and remote-controlled planes away from the energized overhead wires. This is something, again, that Eric did touch on. We have the overhead wires energized at different areas along the entire 13-kilometer alignment. We ask that the public always assume that these overhead wires are energized. And because if you get into contact with them, it can lead to serious injury and it can lead to death. And so we do ask that, again, you be a good neighbor when you can, and just to make sure that if you have any of your, if you see somebody who's, for example, flying a drone or coming to something that's that's in proximity to these overhead wires, we just ask that you remind them again that the overhead wires are live and they are dangerous, and they're other places that they might be able to go to that will be a little bit safer for them. And on that note, we are going to move on to the question segment of this presentation. So once again, how to submit a question or a comment. If you're on your phone or your tablet, you just go to the bottom of the screen. You'll see a Q&A, and if you tap on that, you should be able to submit a question or comment. And if you are on your desktop or your laptop, you'll just have to exit full screen mode and go to the top left corner where you'll see a Q&A. And if you click on that, you'll be able to submit your question or your comment. I've seen a few of them come in here, and we're just going to go through them one by one here. The first question would be for Dallas. Did you say that the quarter stop roadway change was now eastbound or westbound? Oh, Dallas, you're on mute.
Yeah, double muted myself, unmuted one, and clicked the other one. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, 102 Avenue from Jasper Avenue connection, which is very close to 95 Street, to 97th Street, as it passes quarter stop, is westbound. Once you get to 97th Street, you'll have to turn left or right to go north or south. And the reason for that is because 102 Avenue from the beginning of our project limits, which is at 103 Street, going east to 97th Street is eastbound. So effectively you have two single lanes for vehicle traffic coming together and meeting at 97th Street, where they have to turn left or right in both the eastbound and westbound directions. The other thing to note, though, for some clarity, is the bike lanes from 103 Street going to 97th Street. Actually, I think they may end at 99th Street, if I'm recalling correctly, are in both directions. So you do have eastbound and westbound movements for bikes.
Awesome. Thanks, Dallas. Next question is for Eric. Are we going to be getting more trains after the full line is operational?
Well, I'd love for Edmonton to get more trains for sure. But right now, the 26 trains is what is actually intended for the system. It does allow for quite a bit of traffic. And I think that it will be adequate and sufficient, at least for the short to medium term. If there is a need to have additional ones, again, it would be our pleasure to give other trains to the city of Edmonton.
Awesome.
I'll add to Eric's answer. I'm suspecting that this question was more to do with what happens when the west phase comes on, Valley Line West. Valley Line West is not being constructed by TransEd, and Valley Line West train supply will be by a different contractor. So I'd encourage you to look out or reach out to the city. They might be able to give more clarity on that. But yeah, the 26 trains that Eric is talking about is what's required to meet the service demands that the city has on Valley Line Southeast only.
Thank you, Dallas.
Awesome. We have another question here about what safety measures are planned to be in place for the Valley Line Southeast, and how does this differ from the current LRT stations? This is specific to the LRT stations, I believe. I guess so. Would you like to answer that one, Dallas or Eric? I think this is actually a good question.
I can answer that one. The LRT security is provided by ETS along the entire Valley Line. So there's not much that TransEd can comment on this because we aren't actually tied into that. So I would encourage the person asking this question to reach out to the city directly for that information. We do provide video cameras and all of that connectivity and provide those video feeds. Correct me if I'm wrong here anywhere, Eric, but I believe that feeds to the ETS security control center for the entire LRT network in the city. But as I say, all of the actual enforcement is done by ETS and by law enforcement.
Awesome. Eric, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, maybe a couple of things, because I think it could be also seen in different way. So from a security, I just want to chime in with Dallas. We do have cameras that are going to be at the various stops. We also have emergency telephones that are located in strategic positions that will allow the public and ongoing passengers to be able to be reaching out. Those calls will be going directly to our operation control center, where the CCTV is available as well. So people will have situational awareness and can help. And there will be also, of course, ETS security that will be involved in the whole process. So that's one aspect of it. But also, there's many little features that have been thought through along the whole system, from having a sensitive edge for people to be able to detect it when they're getting towards the edge of a platform, to other elements and devices to get people to think and feel their way and sense when they're getting in an area where they should not be going. So it's a great question, and it's open question also. I like those.
Awesome. And for Eric, while we have you talking, when can downtown expect to see some trains going there?
So downtown is our favorite place to be. The way for us to proceed on the testing, and that was mentioned by Dallas earlier, and I mentioned it a little bit also earlier. Our progression is really from south to north. So we start, in and around, the Millwood, Melbourne area. We will focus on that for a little bit of time, just to do our initial integration with some of the major subsystems like signaling, communication, and so on. And all of this to make sure that we have a good solid base. And as we complete the work, then we will be moving our way northwards, and we will be going one segment at a time of the alignment. I would expect that we will be going through scenario runs and demonstration towards the end of the year, and we'll be preparing ourselves for the entry into revenue service. So really, it's going to be quite interesting to have the vehicles into downtown area. You will see first the vehicles going through in downtown area for clearance test, which of course will be a little bit more benign and will be much before that we do the scenario runs and the demonstration of operation, which is intended to simulate full system operation for quite a long period. And then it will be followed by other types of integration with the street lights, with the communication system, the CCTV, and the other items that we discussed about earlier.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Question for Dallas, but I'm sure everyone on the call is wondering, when will people be able to use this Valley Line Southeast LRT?
Yeah, as much as I said I was going to answer it at the beginning, I totally forgot to answer it. Happy to answer that question though, for sure. So the first thing, just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, is Transed is here to operate the trains for the next 30 years. That's part of the public-private partnership that we have with the city. So our operations group is the same four companies that I mentioned before, Bechtel, Elliston, Alstom, and Fengate. So we as a partnership are fully committed to making sure that what we're constructing and what we're turning over to the city of Edmonton and to ourselves is 100% ready for passengers. So if that takes a little longer to do the testing that we need to do and make sure that every wire is communicating the way it's supposed to and every wheel on the train is turning in the right direction, and of course it will be, but that's the time we'll take to do it. So I gave a little bit of a hint earlier on when I was talking about the work in the River Valley. And Eric has kind of alluded to that as well when it comes to the testing and commissioning and when trains will get into the downtown area. So when you consider all of the work that has to happen, as I mentioned, through the summer and into the fall, and the testing and commissioning in that same time frame, we are targeting having passengers welcomed aboard by the end of this year, so by the end of 2021. And we're working hard to make that happen.
Awesome. And so Dallas, what will the stop in front of the library look like downtown?
Not a whole lot different than what you currently see, actually. So maybe Isabel, I don't know if you can go back in the slides, and I know we don't have that particular one, but I can still speak to it even if you look at the quarter stop. I don't know if it's possible for you to do that, but the steel structures, maybe a global or general comment is that the stops along the alignment are all designed to be very integrated with the neighborhood. They're very much I'd like to say, and it doesn't sound right, but I like to say a glorified bus stop. They really are just a large bus stop to what you're used to seeing around the city. The height of the platform itself is not much higher than a typical sidewalk off the edge of the roadway. So it provides easy access, very minimal amount of ramps for mobility challenges and wheelchairs and so on getting up onto the platform. So that's part of the reason why it's called low floor. So the stop itself, though, I mean, there will be some shelters, as you would have seen in those slides that we were showing, in the steel frames that are around there. They're enclosed with glass. They're heated. Some of them have the art that I talked about. Inside of those shelters are benches. Outside of the shelters are additional benches, obviously trash receptacles, something called leaning rails, which are just literally like they sound, something to lean against while you're waiting for the train and you're on your phone or something like that. And of course, I mentioned the cabinets for the systems controls. All those silver cabinets are also there that's required infrastructure. You'll have signage. You'll have panels that give you visual representation of when the train is coming next. I mean, digital display boards, that sort of thing. Very typical, I guess, is the way to describe it. But if you go anywhere along the alignment right now, you get a really good idea of what those stops look like, and they're all very typical that way. And of course, I'll highlight again, the downtown area is unique because it has the paving stones finish as opposed to just concrete. In a lot of our other stops, colored concrete elsewhere, but in the downtown, it's paving stones.
Awesome. And is the construction of the stops behind schedule? And if it is, why is that?
The project, as those of you that know, we are late. The job was supposed to be complete right now. We should have been welcoming passengers on board. However, we encountered some unexpected conditions that you may have heard about a few years ago that caused some delays that we've been working hard to remove or to make back that time. But the reality is that caused delays. So, I mean, technically, yes, I guess you could say the stops are behind schedule. But as I mentioned, we're working hard to make sure that when they're operational, everything is perfect, and we'll have that targeted for the end of this year.
Great.
I saw a question earlier, Isabel, and you may have answered it electronically, but the question was the connection to Rogers Place. It's a great question. I can tell you right now that the 102 Street stop, the one furthest for us into downtown, or on the for us the west end of the alignment, is the closest Valley Line connection to Rogers Place. The other option that passengers will have is to exit the Valley Line at the Churchill Connector, which is at the Churchill stop up on the street level, and then take the stairs or the elevator or escalator down to the existing Churchill station and board the Metro line. And the Metro line will take you to the north side of Rogers Place, and you can get off in close proximity to the arena there.
Perfect. Someone did ask how many stops will be along Edmonton City Center.
One, the 102 Street stop is the stop adjacent to Edmonton City Center.
I think those are all our questions.
One thing I wanted to mention, Isabel, the safety aspects of downtown is a little bit unique, so I wanted to talk about that here briefly. Eric, I think, mentioned that the trains are very quiet. They don't move quickly through downtown, and they're not an automatic, like, driverless train. They have a driver. So it's important for pedestrians in the downtown area to really be aware of their surroundings. Obviously, the driver of that train is going to be very aware of what pedestrians are doing as well, and he'll be proceeding, or she, very slowly as they drive through downtown, and that's built into the design and built into our travel times. We understand that that's a necessity when you're working and moving through a relatively congested area with pedestrians. But from the pedestrian and cyclist perspective, it's really important that you're staying on your designated assigned sidewalks or bike lanes when you're traveling through downtown. Don't cross the track at mid-block portions. Go to the intersections, cross at the crosswalks where the traffic lights are located, and follow those traffic signals, as Isabel said. But just the downtown area is going to be really unique. I think you're going to really, it's going to have a bit of my opinion, a bit of a European feel, having these trains that are very low to the ground coming through downtown. And I think I'm personally excited to see what that looks like. I think it's going to be really unique and interesting. And but it does bring with it some new safety learnings that the public will have to do. And we'll be working with the city to roll out some safety plans along those lines and make sure that people are fully aware of the need to and how to interact with our new low floor system in the downtown area. So watch for that.
Another question here is, how will these trains affect downtown festivals and farmers markets?
I think they will be a huge improvement. This is going to provide connectivity to people that perhaps otherwise could not make it into the downtown areas. You know, the outer reaching areas, for instance, into the Millwoods area, people that perhaps don't have a vehicle. The biggest advantage to having an LRT line is to remove cars from the road. And certainly that's an environmental consideration that we're all trying to do. So this creates a new connection for those people to hop on the Valley Line, head from Southeast Edmonton and into downtown and be able to connect to the festivals, to connect to the Mud Art Conservatory and Rogers Place and the downtown farmers markets. All of these events are going to have that much more connectivity brought about because of the Valley Line.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time to be able to connect the Edmontonians to more of Edmonton, basically.
That's right.
There are a few more minutes here. If you have any questions that you would like to submit, please go ahead while we have Eric and Dallas and Michelle on the call. And also, because this is our last presentation for this segment of the spring open houses.
Dallas, I apologize if you touched on this and my head is just spinning with information, but did you talk about the art that's going to be on the SUP on the bridge?
No, I did not. Thanks for bringing that up. Isabel, you may have to remind me.
I submitted
Go ahead.
I just put a link in the earlier on in the presentation. I put a link for everyone to have access to the Edmonton Arts Council website, where there are the files detailing each of the public arts for the different stops along the alignment. I believe the one for the Watna Bridge is probably one of the first ones actually on that link that I sent.
Yeah, it's indigenous sculptures that hang from the roof above the shared use path. There's, I don't know, there's a lot of them. They're spaced all the way along the length of the bridge. Excited to see what that looks like. And I think if I recall correctly, that it was a cooperative between multiple indigenous artists that pulled that together.
It's a series of 400 paintings that will run
Yeah,
across the ceiling of the pedestrian walkway of the Duatna Bridge.
thanks, Isabel. So yeah, not sculptures, but paintings that hang down. Yeah, that's right. There's some really unique art. I really encourage those that are watching to go to that website and check out the sculptures and the glass and the there's a unique inflatable structure that'll be hung within the Churchill connector building above the stairs that you'll, I think, find really intriguing. I'll just we'll call them playful deer. Go find the playful deer by visiting that website and you'll find out where they're being installed on the alignment. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, and question for Eric here. How long will the ride be between Mill Woods and downtown?
Really, it's going to be fairly short, if you compare to how long it's going to take for a vehicle, for example, to go across the bridges and make its way to downtown. If I remember well, it's around 30 minutes or a bit less than that for the round trip.
I believe it's 31 or 32 minutes, yes.
Yeah.
Great. Can't see any more questions coming out. Oh, here we go. Without many barriers, will that be a safety concern where vehicles might end up on the tracks?
That's a good question, and we get that one a lot as well.
Yep.
There are isolated locations where there are physical barriers. So there are not gates. There are not like chain link fences along the entire alignment separating the road right of way from the track right of way. The design incorporates curb and gutter type infrastructure to separate the road from the track. Now, they are known as semi-mountable curb and gutters, and that's required in some cases and some locations to allow emergency vehicles, an ambulance that needs to get around a stalled vehicle, as an example, to be able to pull out and drive onto the track. But it's not intended for the public to drive on, although physically you absolutely could. So stay on the paved roadway, stay off of the curbs, and the vehicles, driving vehicles, will be able to navigate okay. The other thing to watch for, the track itself, the concrete trackway, is colored concrete in a lot of our locations, and that's to, again, distinguish between the asphalt color and the trackway color to help the driver understand when, particularly if they're making a turning movement, not to accidentally turn onto the trackway, but rather turn into the roadway. So just watch for those, and the markings on the road will, of course, guide that as well, as is very typical through intersections. When we talk about pedestrians, there are a few localized areas, the closest being along Connors Hill, down the slope, which is relatively, as a cyclist, I mean, I can remember being a teenager, wanted to zip down there as fast as I could. But sometimes cyclists lose control as well. And so to create a safety barrier or a safety separation between the track and cyclists, there is a railing that will go down that slope. That is occurring in a few other localized areas along the alignment where the road right of way is fairly narrow and where the sidewalk is in close enough proximity to the track that a railing is justified. And it's all done through careful design. There's a lot of safety standards that have to be met. There's third-party safety auditors that take a look at that and weigh in as well. And ultimately, we're following all of that direction and contractual requirements and safety standards that are in the industry. And then one other thing I want to point, when it comes to barriers and channelization is what it's actually called. When you think about a pedestrian crossing a trackway, we call it a track, we're just crossing the track. The goal through our design is to cause that pedestrian to turn in the direction of the train approaching, or the typical direction that it might be approaching. So what ends up happening is, as you approach the track, an S curve is probably the best way to describe it, is created with the sidewalk as it crosses, or the crossing for the track, and fences are used, or railings are used, to cause a person to have to turn to the right, look down the track. You may not even realize you're doing it, but you've turned in the direction of the train approaching, and then to cross the track at that point. And then the opposite occurs for anybody walking the other direction. So that'll occur at various crossings of the track. You also see that sometimes when pedestrians are crossing a roadway and you cross through an island, or we call them a pork chop, adjacent to a turning lane. If we want people to not shortcut and cross the track, which is also perhaps crossing there, we'll channel them using some railings to properly get them to the crosswalk that would cross the turning lane in those cases. It's hard to describe, but you'll see that come to life here in the coming months. And we'll be doing more safety education on our social media channels for that sort of stuff as well. So very limited overall railings and separations, but where they are in place is for safety reasons and for the safety of the public.
Really fun question here. Thanks, Dallas, for that. Which portion of the project are you most proud of? I'll start with Eric.
Well, okay, I'll be lying if I don't talk about the vehicle, but to be quite honest, the whole system is really, really wonderful. I look at the bridge, I look at the buildings, I look at the art that was put all along the guideway. It's really, really wonderful, and all the effort also for the reforestation and the rebuilding nature in and around the system. For me, that's really, really great effort. But I would say, the part that I really love the most is the commissioning part. This is where it's interesting because we're literally putting the system to life, and to be able to get the system from a state where we have all kinds of components, little bits and pieces, and make this into a workable system with the people that operate it and the people that they service. Really, that's the part that really that I like. It's a wonderful thing, and as I say to a lot of the teams working in and around the transit, all of you are being part of the system, and you're bringing it to bear, and nobody will be able to take that away from you, and you'll remember that for the rest of your life, and you'll say, I'm part of this. And it truly is what I like with bringing those systems into life.
Thanks, Eric. Next is Dallas. So I feel like Dallas has something to do with asphalt, but please carry on.
It's funny you say that because actually I was thinking that, but I'm going to say more than just that. So first of all, I completely agree with Eric. The most important thing is just being involved in this project. It's a transformative project for Edmonton, and I look forward to. I've lived in Edmonton for many years. I went to school here. I'm a NAIT graduate, so being part of something that's so significant in the progress of the city, to me, is just amazing. I love looking back on the projects that I've built in the past, and I know I'm going to love looking back on this project in the future. For me personally, I've been involved in this project for 2 years, even before a shovel hit the ground. So I'm into my 8th year right now on Valley Line work, and so I've lived and breathed this project for a very long time. So to see the end so much in sight now is incredibly exciting. To be able to ride on a moving train this coming Thursday for the first time, I am super excited about that. I haven't convinced him to let me drive it yet, and I probably never will convince him, but just to be able to get on the train and actually feel it move down the tracks, and I mean, the blood, sweat, and tears that our team has poured into this project for the last numerous years is, the public will never understand it, never really see that, but I do get to see that. I do have people that work directly for me and have seen them grow tremendously as they face the challenges of this job, and that's a huge sense of pride. And then to get to the end and just to be able to watch the train roll and see passengers come on board is just super exciting for me. I don't know what I'm going to do when we're done that, because like I said, it's been 8 years. I don't know. It's going to be a hard day, but a very happy day.
Maybe you'll get your qualification as an operator, and you'll drive a train so you can actually drive it. But you're going to need to qualify first.
That's what I've been missing. Good to know.
A question here for Eric. How many kilometers of track is an emergency vehicle able to drive on?
Well,
I can probably answer that.
Yeah, you can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's two distinctions to make. So the track that we have right now is either embedded or direct fixation. We also have a third, but that's in the operation maintenance facility, which is on ballast, the typical stone that you see CN and CP rail, heavy rail running on. So the track that can be driven on by a vehicle in an emergency situation is our embedded track. So you'll see that Basically, I mean, from Argyle Road entirely going to the top of Connors Hill. Of course, on Connors Hill, the track becomes separate. And then when we pick up again on 102 Avenue, it's embedded track again that the emergency vehicles could drive on. If you think about the southern portion, which would be, 28th Avenue, and then you make the turn onto 66th Street and you head north and you come up across the white mud and 66th Street becomes 75th Street. That whole portion, the track it's in a wider area. It's a newer area of the city, so the road allowances are a little wider. So because of that, the track was able to be built in a more separated fashion from the roadway, and there's really no reason to ever have to drive an emergency vehicle on the track. That really doesn't occur until we get into the more densely residential areas along 83rd Street, 85th Street, 95th Avenue, and 102nd Avenue.
I guess I'll.
So I can't tell you how many kilometers. It's roughly half of it, probably.
Yeah, half of it, I would say half, or maybe a little bit more than half, because Davies you can't in the tunnel and in the bridge. So
yeah,
probably around.
Yeah, I never mentioned that. The elevated portion alone is 1.2 kilometers. The tunnel itself is 400 meters, so 0.4 of a kilometer. So I mean, we're almost 2 kilometers of completely separated rail from the traffic. Yeah.
Yep, and I think that's it for our questions. So thank you for attending Transit's virtual spring open house. If there are any more questions that you might have or something that we might not have covered, please feel free to visit our website. We have lots of information that's there. It's transitlrt.ca, or you can call us 780-224-0964, or you can email us at info@transitlrt.ca. There will be a survey that will show up at the end of this presentation. We ask that you please do take the time to fill out that survey. It helps us know how we can do better, give you more of the information that you would like to hear. And thank you again. And thanks, Dallas. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Michelle. It's been great doing these virtual spring open houses, and looking forward to doing them again sometime soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have
Stay
a good
safe.
evening.
Bye-bye.